Karen was at it again. It was a scene I'd witnessed too many times growing up. An overinflated HOA president standing on a sidewalk berating someone for an offense that only existed in her head. But this time, she'd picked the wrong target. From the driver's seat of my patrol car, I could already see her, a human-shaped clipboard with a superiority complex, arms crossed, mouth moving at 90 miles an hour. Opposite her, an older woman stood her ground. My mother. I didn't even need to hear the conversation to know exactly how this was going down. Karen, this is a violation of community guidelines. My mother, I've lived here since before you could spell guidelines. Rules are rules. My mother, and I'm about to break one if you don't get out of my face. I sighed, rolling my neck as I stepped out of my car. This was going to be fun. I approached the scene like I would any high-tension standoff. Karen turned at the sound of my boots on pavement, her expression immediately shifting into one of self-importance. She sized me up, probably taking in the neatly pressed uniform, the badge, the gun at my hip, before deciding that I was someone she could talk down to. "I'm glad you're here, officer," she began, tilting her chin up like a queen addressing a peasant. "There's been a violation of community standards." I arched an eyebrow. "Oh?" She exhaled sharply, gesturing toward my mother with the same energy one might use to point at an escaped zoo animal. "This woman has been placing unauthorized decorations in her front yard." I looked at my mother. She looked at me. Then, very slowly, she turned back to Karen and deadpanned, "It's a garden gnome." Karen bristled. "An unapproved garden gnome. The HOA has clear regulations about outdoor ornamentation." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "You called a complaint over a gnome?" Karen nodded, completely serious. "Yes. If we allow one gnome, what's next? Flamingos? Wind chimes? Chaos?" I stared at her, then looked at my mother, who was trying very hard not to laugh. That's when Karen made her second mistake. She turned back to me and said, "If you won't handle this, I'll call law enforcement." There was a long pause. Then, very slowly, I unhooked my sunglasses from my uniform pocket, slid them on, and let the silence stretch. "Ma'am," I said, deadpan, "I am law enforcement." Karen's face did something glorious, a mix of realization, horror, and the dawning understanding that she had just massively overplayed her hand. "Oh," she said faintly. I let the word hang in the air for a moment. Then I smiled. "Oh," I echoed. "This is going to be fun." My mother has lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. She's watched kids grow up, move out, and watch their parents pretend they weren't relieved. She's hosted block parties, baked pies for new neighbors, and single-handedly scared off 2 different real estate developers who thought they could revitalize the area by bulldozing the community center. But if there's one thing she doesn't do, it's HOA meetings. "Oh, hell no," she said the first time someone invited her. "I'm too old to be getting lectured about what color I can paint my damn door." And honestly, I respected that, because HOAs, particularly this one, are less about community and more about giving power-hungry suburban tyrants a platform to ruin people's weekends. And leading the charge was Karen. Karen wasn't just an HOA president. She was a textbook dictator, minus the military uniform, though I wouldn't put it past her to enforce a dress code eventually. She wielded her clipboard like a weapon, always ready to strike with a violation notice, a passive-aggressive email, or a sudden committee vote that no one remembered actually voting on. And the rules? Utter nonsense. Trash cans must be precisely 3 feet from the curb, no more, no less. Front doors must be painted in neutral, aesthetically pleasing tones, which apparently meant 50 shades of beige. Lawn gnomes were strictly prohibited, lest the neighborhood descend into anarchy. But this time, Karen had gone too far. I sat across from my mother at her kitchen table, listening as she recounted the Great Gnome incident in exasperated detail. She said it was a violation of community aesthetics. My mother scoffed, stabbing a spoon into her coffee. "It's a gnome, not a damn billboard." I grinned. "She really threatened to fine you?" She said if I didn't remove it by the end of the week, she'd escalate it to the HOA board. My mother took a sip of coffee, so I went ahead and ordered 4 more. I nearly choked. "You didn't." "Oh, I did," she said cheerfully. "A Viking gnome, a pirate gnome, a gnome holding a Karen-free zone sign." I burst out laughing. That's when a loud knock rattled the front door. We both turned. Through the window, I could already see her. Karen, clipboard in hand, standing at the door like a sheriff ready to serve an eviction notice. My mother sighed, setting down her coffee. Oh, good, she's here to complain in person. I stretched my arms, smirking. Perfect. Let's go make her day worse. If there's one thing you should know about Karen, it's this. When she loses, she doesn't admit defeat. She doubles down. So after the Great Gnome incident, she needed a new battlefield. And unfortunately for my mother, she found one. It started on a Thursday morning when my mother stepped outside and saw something that nearly made her drop her coffee. A fence. Not a normal, sensible fence. A 6-foot-tall, HOA-approved decorative barrier stretching across the alley behind her house. Now let me clarify. This alley wasn't private property. It was a public access walkway that had been used by residents for decades. For my mother, it was her shortcut to the grocery store, the pharmacy, and most importantly, bingo night. And now? Blocked by Karen's latest abuse of power. I got the call an hour later. She built a damn wall, my mother snapped the moment I picked up. Who does she think she is? A budget-friendly medieval lord? I frowned. Wait, who built what? The HOA put up a fence behind my house, she said. Karen's calling it a decorative improvement. I pinched the bridge of my nose. And let me guess, this has nothing to do with safety or function. Oh no, my mother said dryly. Karen just decided it wasn't aesthetically pleasing to have people walking through the alley. Apparently, my shortcut offends her delicate suburban sensibilities. I exhaled. I'm coming over. By the time I arrived, my mother was already standing at the new barrier, arms crossed, seething. And, of course, Karen was there too. Clipboard in hand, smug as ever. She barely glanced at me before addressing my mother in her usual corporate meets condescending tone. This is a community improvement project, she said, gesturing to the fence like she was unveiling a masterpiece. It enhances the neighborhood's visual harmony. My mother scoffed. It's a plank of wood. Karen didn't even flinch. Regulations clearly state that all community structures must be in alignment with HOA-approved aesthetics. I turned to my mother. And this stops you from? It blocks the alley, she said, which means I now have to take a half-mile detour just to get around my own neighborhood. At night. I frowned. That's not just inconvenient, that's dangerous. Karen rolled her eyes like we were personally inconveniencing her by existing. It's not my fault your mother refuses to drive. I turned back to her slowly. You do realize not everyone has the luxury of driving everywhere, right? Karen shrugged. Rules are rules. Oh, that did it. That was Karen's favorite phrase. She loved hiding behind it, wielding it like some divine decree. But here's the thing about rules. They work both ways. And as I looked at her, standing there smug and self-righteous, an idea began to form. Karen wanted to play with rules? Fine. Let's see how she liked playing by mine. I visited my mother that Saturday. No badge, no uniform, just a regular guy in jeans and a t-shirt, here to check on his mom and hopefully not commit a felony before lunch. We sat at the kitchen table as she recounted the Great Barrier nonsense. She said it was community beautification. My mother huffed, stirring her tea with unnecessary aggression. I told her she had the aesthetic sense of a brick. I smirked. And? She didn't like that. Shocking. She took a sip. So, you're handling this. I leaned back in my chair. I just want to talk to her. My mother raised an eyebrow. Define talk. I smiled. I found Karen standing in front of the fence-shaped crime scene, clipboard in hand, dictating something to a bored-looking HOA lackey. She didn't notice me at first. I strolled up casually, hands in my pockets, just a normal guy asking normal questions. Excuse me, I said, my tone pleasant. I was wondering if you could explain this improvement project. Karen turned, and for a brief, glorious moment, she had no idea who I was. She scanned me up and down, immediately sizing me up as some nobody, just the problem son of the old lady next door. Oh, she said, lips curling in mild distaste. You must be with. She gestured vaguely toward my mother's house. Her. I gave a slow nod. I'm her son. Karen exhaled, already dismissing me in her head. This is HOA business, she said, her voice dripping with false authority. And you're not from here. She looked me dead in the eye and said, this doesn't concern you. I tilted my head slightly, watching her, watching the way she carried herself, how she expected me to nod, mumble something respectful, and walk away. I smiled. Really? Karen had no idea who she was dealing with. She thought I was just some concerned son visiting his elderly mother, some nobody who would back down the moment she threw around phrases like community standards and HOA jurisdiction. She thought her little clipboard and HOA title made her untouchable. What she didn't know was that she had just challenged a state trooper to a game of legal warfare. And I do not lose. That night, I went to work. Most people think police work is all about chasing bad guys and kicking down doors. But you know what's just as satisfying? Paperwork. Specifically, digging through it to find out when someone has royally screwed themselves. I started with county property records, public documents, permit requests, zoning approvals. It took about 20 minutes to find the first red flag, then another, and another. By the time I finished my deep dive into HOA hell, I had all the proof I needed, and it was beautiful. Karen's mistake number 1, no permit. If you want to build anything that affects public access, even something as small as a decorative fence, you need a permit from the city. Guess what Karen didn't have? That's right. I searched the local zoning database. No requests, no approvals, nothing. Karen hadn't even tried to do this legally. She just declared herself the queen of the cul-de-sac and started making up rules. Bold move. Dumb move. Karen's mistake number 2, blocking public property. The alley behind my mom's house, it wasn't HOA property, it was a public right-of-way. That meant the city, not Karen, had jurisdiction over it. And blocking it off? Completely illegal. HOAs love to act like they own everything inside their little gated empires, but the reality is they don't control public land. And now, Karen wasn't just facing angry neighbors. She was facing the city government. Karen's mistake 3, fines. HOA violations are one thing, but violating municipal zoning laws, that comes with fines. And not just slap on the wrist HOA fines. I'm talking thousands of dollars in potential penalties. The best part, if the city ordered her to remove the fence, the HOA would have to pay for it. Oh, Karen was about to have a very bad day. I picked up my phone and dialed an old contact at the local police department. Hey, I said casually, hypothetically, what happens if a homeowners association blocks off a public alley without city approval? The officer on the other end let out a low whistle. Well, first off, that's a zoning violation. And they'd be ordered to remove it. If they refuse, the city steps in and does it for them, at their expense, I grinned. And fines? Depends on how bad they screwed up, a few thousand at least. I nodded, satisfied. Karen had spent years hiding behind rules, using technicalities to bully people into submission. But this time, the rules weren't on her side. And in less than 24 hours, she was about to learn that there are laws even HOA presidents can't break. Karen thought she was untouchable. She had spent years getting her way, lording over the neighborhood like some kind of suburban dictator, barking out rules, issuing fines, and making people's lives miserable. But today, she was about to learn a very expensive lesson. I walked up to her house, my mother watching from the porch, sipping her coffee like she was about to witness the most satisfying reality TV moment of her life. Karen was already outside, clipboard in hand, now berating a landscaper about proper mulch placement when I arrived. She turned at the sound of my footsteps, barely disguising her irritation. "Oh," she said flatly. "You again." I smiled. "Good morning, Karen." She exhaled sharply, arms crossing over her chest. "If this is about the fence, I already told your mother." I cut her off, holding up a thick folder of documents. "Actually," I said, flipping open the top page, "I did some checking and I just have one question." Karen narrowed her eyes. "What?" I tapped the document. "Are you absolutely sure this fence is legal?" There was a beat of silence. Then, without missing a beat, Karen tilted her chin up, squared her shoulders, and lied straight to my face. "Of course it is," she said coldly. I let the silence stretch. Then, ever so slowly, I smiled and pulled my badge from my pocket. Karen's entire demeanor shifted in an instant. Her smug expression collapsed into sheer panic as her eyes locked onto the badge. Her face drained of color. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. I leaned in slightly. "Karen," I said, voice calm, "I'm a state police officer." She swallowed. "And you just lied to an officer about a violation of the law." Her clipboard slipped slightly in her grip. I held up a hand. "Let's go over what just happened, shall we?" I flipped a page in my folder, reading aloud with deliberate slowness. The HOA built a barrier on public land. Flip. The HOA never obtained a permit. The HOA is now in direct violation of municipal code. I snapped the folder shut, meeting her wide, panicked eyes. Karen looked like she was about 5 seconds from fainting. I smiled. This, I gestured vaguely toward the fence, is going to be a problem. Karen opened and closed her mouth like a fish. Then finally she managed, This is a misunderstanding, I grinned. Oh, I don't think it is. Karen was unraveling. For the first time in her clipboard-wielding, fine-issuing, power-tripping reign, she wasn't the one in control. And she knew it. She sputtered, struggling to regain her composure. This is all a misunderstanding, she insisted, straightening her blazer like that would somehow reassemble her dignity. The HOA was just protecting the community. I raised an eyebrow. By illegally blocking a public alley? Karen stiffened. It was meant to improve neighborhood security. I flipped open my folder again. Funny, because according to city records, this alley has been an open access point for over 50 years. No complaints, no incidents. Until now. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Behind her, the HOA board members had started whispering among themselves. Karen must have noticed because she whipped around, her voice suddenly sharp. This is ridiculous, she snapped. We all agreed this was best for the neighborhood. A pause, then a crack in the facade. I didn't agree to anything, a voice spoke up. Karen froze. I turned to see one of the board members, a middle-aged man in a golf polo, step forward, arms crossed. Karen, he said slowly, when exactly did we vote on this? Karen's jaw tightened. Well, it was discussed in a leadership meeting. Another board member, a woman in a floral blouse, snorted. Oh, you mean the leadership meetings, where only you and your friends get invited? The murmurs grew louder. Karen sensed it. The shift. For years, she had ruled this HOA like a queen overseeing her beige-colored empire. But now, the villagers were getting their torches ready. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I heard a quiet voice beside me. Excuse me, officer? I turned to see a neighbor, a woman in her 60s, wringing her hands. She leaned in, lowering her voice. She's been doing this for years, she whispered. Pushing things through without votes, fining people over nonsense, threatening to raise dues if we question her. I glanced back at Karen, who was now frantically trying to keep control of the board members. Interesting. I looked at the neighbor again. How many people here would say Karen has overstepped? She let out a small, bitter laugh. Half the neighborhood, at least. My smile grew wider. I had come here to deal with one violation. But now I was about to take this much, much further. Karen was still scrambling to put out fires when I made a very important phone call. City Code Enforcement, a bored voice answered. Hi, I said, all business. I need to report a zoning violation by a homeowners association. That got their attention. Within an hour, a city inspector arrived, and he was not happy. Karen was standing at the barricade, still trying to convince the HOA board that they needed to remain unified. When the inspector pulled up in his white city vehicle, his uniform pressed, his clipboard ready. Who's in charge here? He asked, stepping out. Karen turned to greet him, but the moment she saw the city logo on his uniform, her smile faltered. Hello, she stammered, clearly trying to regain control. How can I help you? The inspector didn't bother with pleasantries. We received a complaint about an unauthorized structure blocking a public right-of-way, he said. I need to see your permit for this barricade. Karen visibly swallowed. Well, you see, she began, suddenly sweating, this was a community decision. Ma'am, the inspector cut her off. I'm not asking about a community decision. I'm asking if you have a permit. There was a long, beautiful silence. Then Karen lied. Of course we have a permit, she said, forcing a tight smile. The inspector raised an eyebrow. Great, let's see it. Karen's fingers twitched around her clipboard. Well, I don't have it on me, she stalled, but I'll wait, the inspector said, folding his arms. Karen's face paled. Behind her, the HOA board members were watching, whispering. Some of them already looked betrayed. The inspector sighed. Ma'am, if you don't have a permit, this structure is illegal. Karen opened her mouth, closed it. Then, defeat. Well, I'm issuing an immediate order for removal, the inspector said, scribbling something on his clipboard. You'll also be facing a fine. Karen flinched. How much of a fine? He looked up, expression unreadable. A few $1,000s. Gasps. The HOA board members erupted. You never told us this was illegal, one of them snapped. I thought we voted on this, another said. Karen looked around wildly, realizing finally that she was alone. The inspector handed her the citation. "You have 72 hours to remove this barricade," he said, "or the city will remove it for you at your expense." Karen didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there gripping her clipboard like it was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. And me? I just stood there, arms crossed, watching as the empire she built crumbled around her. The emergency HOA meeting was standing room only. Word had spread fast. Karen had screwed up. And now, everyone who had ever been fined, bullied, or condescended to by her was here for blood. I arrived early, purely for the entertainment value. My mother came too. She even brought popcorn. Karen, to her credit, was still trying to hold on to her crumbling kingdom. She sat at the front of the room, clipboard in hand, jaw clenched, posture stiff. She knew she was in trouble, but she still thought she could weasel her way out of it. "Oh, Karen, you should have quit while you were ahead." Karen's last stand. The moment the meeting started, people pounced. "This barricade nonsense cost me hundreds in lost work hours," one man snapped. "I had to walk an extra half-mile every day because of this," a woman added. "And who's paying the fines?" someone else yelled. "Because I sure as hell am not covering for this mess." Karen held up a hand, attempting to quiet them. "We must remain civil," she said, forcing an unconvincing smile. "I understand there have been complications." Complications? That was the wrong word. The crowd erupted again. "Complications?" a voice bellowed from the back. "Lady, you illegally built a damn wall." Karen tightened her grip on her clipboard. I was acting in the best interest of the community." An old man in the front row scoffed loudly. "We never voted for you in the first place." The room fell silent. Karen blinked. For the first time since this mess started, she looked genuinely rattled. And then, the real knives came out. The HOA turns on its queen. One of the board members, the same woman who had called out Karen during the barricade fiasco, stood up. "I move for a vote of no confidence," she said. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Karen's eyes widened. "Wait." "I second it," another board member said. Karen gripped her clipboard tighter. "Now, let's not be hasty. All in favor of removing Karen from the HOA?" A sea of hands shot up. Karen looked around, panic creeping into her expression. She turned to the remaining board members. "Tom? Dave? Surely you." Dave, a middle-aged man in a golf polo, avoided her gaze like a guilty child. "Sorry, Karen. You, kinda dug your own grave here." Karen's face turned bright red. She stood up abruptly, hands shaking. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "I have given years to this community." You destroyed this community," someone corrected. The old man from earlier leaned forward, smirking. "Now pack your clipboard and get the hell out." Checkmate. Karen stood there, fists clenched, shaking with rage, but she knew it was over. With one final glare, she grabbed her clipboard and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Applause broke out, and just like that, Karen was gone. My mother casually popped a piece of popcorn into her mouth. "Well," she mused, "that was fun." I smirked. "Yeah," I said. "And the best part?" She raised an eyebrow. "It's not over yet." The barricade came down 2 days later. It was almost poetic. The very same HOA landscapers Karen had bossed around for years were now the ones dismantling her final mistake. I watched as the wooden panels were torn apart, revealing the familiar alley once again. My mother stood beside me, arms crossed, nodding in approval. "Back where it belongs," she said. She took a step forward, deliberately walking through the alley like she was reclaiming stolen land. For the first time in weeks, her path was clear. HOA on a tight leash. After Karen's fall from grace, the HOA was put under intense scrutiny. Residents, now empowered by Karen's downfall, began questioning everything. Budgets, audited, fines, reevaluated, dues, reduced. Apparently, once Karen was gone, people realized half of the rules didn't even make sense. Funny how that works. The final goodbye. Karen quietly left the neighborhood a week later. No grand farewell, no final power move. She packed up her Lexus and disappeared, leaving behind nothing but a legacy of overpriced fines and unnecessary drama. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt lighter, and the best part? Nobody missed her. A small moment of glory. A few days later, as I was visiting my mother, I felt a tug on my sleeve. I looked down to see a kid from the neighborhood, maybe 10 years old, looking up at me with wide eyes. "Hey," he said, tilting his head. "Are you the guy who kicked the HOA's ass?" I stared at him for a second, then burst out laughing. I crouched down, smiling. "No, kid," I said, shaking my head. "I'm just a law-abiding citizen." He grinned. "Cool." Then he ran off, disappearing down the same alley that had once been blocked. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching the peaceful neighborhood Karen had tried to control but never truly owned. And for the first time in a long time, it actually felt like home,